Welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. You've got Evan Knowles and Logan Jones here recording out of the Awesome Inc. studio here in Lexington, Kentucky. We just sat down with Tony Ellis and David Brock from KY Innovation, who are now sponsors. You'll hear their sponsorship here in a bit. They've been super supportive of Middle Tech. We're very grateful for them and their support. They've helped us grow and accelerate our operations here and reaching more people in better ways. So we're very grateful for them. But we sat down with them and talked about, what they do day in and day out to support entrepreneurs. I have firsthand felt their effect on the state of Kentucky and how they help entrepreneurs. And it's needed, it's essential, and very grateful for what they do for entrepreneurs because I've felt it. And they dove into exactly how they get funding from the state and then pass that on to entrepreneurs to help them grow their businesses. So really awesome conversation.
Yeah, this was one I was excited for just because it kind of forced me to dive into their annual report. And I say forced me, it's not like it was unenjoyable, but it's just not something that I don't know if I would have normally picked it up to read it as a 53-page report. But we talk about it a lot and reference it a lot in this interview. And I would actually encourage any listeners who are interested to go and check out what's in there. Because for me, what it did and what a lot of this conversation is just connecting all the dots of all the different resources in the state and the ways funds are being allocated and the people behind those. So this is just one of those interviews where we sat down and we talked about what is KY Innovation? What do they do? Who do they work with? What programs do they run? And we honestly barely scratched the surface. So I know we're pretty outspoken on this podcast about access to capital, but this is one of those interviews that provides a lot of encouragement that there is a lot of attention being paid to that and a lot of programs being started and people working really hard to try and solve that for this startup ecosystem. So really encouraging interview, a lot of really good conversation just around what's going on in this state and where we're headed into the future. So we're really, really excited for you guys to take a listen to it. If you're an entrepreneur, definitely pay close attention to this one. Lots of different resources are mentioned that are there for you guys. So you'll hear it multiple times, kyinnovation.com. That's where you can go and learn more about all the things that they do and the resources they offer. But we'll go ahead and dive in here so that you guys can get a full picture on what KY Innovation is. Before we dive in, we want to get a quick word from our sponsors, one of which being KY Innovation. Middle Tech is presented by KY Innovation, the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development's entrepreneurship and innovation partner. KY Innovation exists to support and develop Kentucky's startup ecosystem, and we are proud to work alongside an organization whose mission aligns so closely with ours. If you're a founder building in Kentucky, you need to check out the resources that KY Innovation has to offer. You can find more information at kyinnovation.com.
Our next sponsor is the Johnson Law Group and Brandon Johnson. Brandon represents my startup, and I've had great experience with them and works with companies from inception to billion-dollar valuations. Whether you are trying to formalize a side hustle or bring new technology to market, the Johnson Law Group is willing to help by offering a free 30-minute consult. Schedule yours today at thejohnsonlawgroup.com and tell him that we sent you.
We are also sponsored by Bolt Marketing. As a business owner, you're forced to wear multiple hats, but you should be focused on growing your business while you let somebody else handle your marketing. Our friends over at Bolt offer a full suite of services from websites to branding that will help you transform your marketing and grow your business. To learn more about how Bolt can help you with your business goals, you can check them out at buildwithbolt.com. Again, that's buildwithbolt.com.
All right, let's get into it. We are here with Tony Ellis and David Brock from KY Innovation, who we've become real close with here recently. I'm sure you guys listening will recognize the name from as our presenting sponsor of Season 5. So we're super grateful for you guys providing the support that you do and now taking your time to come here and record an episode with us. So real quick, Tony is the General Counsel of the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development and also the Executive Director of KY Innovation. And David is the Director of Operations for KY Innovation. So guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Let's just start by talking about your all's background real quick. So just real briefly, where you're from, maybe where you went to school, and then we'll get into your all's roles at KY Innovation.
So yeah, I'm David Brock. I actually came to the cabinet in a somewhat interesting way. My background is actually in journalism. I had a career in multiple sort of facets of journalism, but ultimately for the last phase of that, I was a newspaper editor and in, I guess, news management for a media company. And I started off working at the cabinet more in sort of a communications marketing role. and then assumed a little bit more responsibility and kind of got detailed more toward working in innovation and entrepreneurship. That was an interest of mine, something that I kind of had some background in both covering and kind of interacting with people in that space. And so once I started, I really didn't want to stop. I'd tell people that I didn't really expect to stay longer than about 6 months. Cabinet for Economic Development, and it's been over 4 years now. And that's a testament, I think, to just really the excitement around the work with startups and entrepreneurship culture in the state of Kentucky, and kind of the potential that I see there and the need. So that is a little bit about me.
Cool. Tony, how about you?
Sure, and thanks for having us. My name is Anthony Ellis. As Logan noted, I'm a lawyer, the general counsel for the Cabinet for Economic Development, and also run KY Innovation. Didn't grow up in Kentucky, grew up in Philadelphia. Spent almost all of my life on the East Coast. Went to college and law school in D.C. at George Washington University. Spent a brief year as a law clerk out in Colorado, living in Denver, basically as a ski bum law clerk.
Nice.
Pretty incredible year. And ended up in New York for about 8 years, doing a lot of different legal work, corporate work, litigation work, representing small businesses all the way up to Fortune 50 companies, in contracts and corporate disputes or 4-week trial out in Delaware, and really came to Kentucky for the same reason I think so many people do, which is I was living on the East Coast, looking at what my life would be like if I stayed. And the cost of living and the difficulty of just access to so many of the basic things we take for granted, like childcare or, being able to find a good place to live at a reasonable price. Yeah. It just doesn't exist in the same way it used to. So as I started to think about where I wanted to spend the rest of my life, I hosted a bachelor party here.
Really?
True story. 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Wow. We knew we wanted to go somewhere in the middle of the country. It was a bunch of guys that were in Chicago and LA, and the guy that was getting married, his best friend lived in Louisville. So made it an easy decision, and I immediately fell in love with it. And over the next year, just kept talking to different people about Louisville and is that the right fit? And it became clear each time I came here, things just worked out really well. And I came for the Derby, and that's a great time to meet Louisville. And fell in love with it. And I've been here now 9 years. I continue to be impressed by the quality of the people, by the quality of the companies, and ended up at the cabinet in a fortuitous and circuitous way. I just ended up getting to know a lot of the people that were joining the administration through a couple different cases I did and some work that I had done. And they were just great people, were really committed. And when they came to me, they know I loved West Wing. and I believe in public service. And so we ended up, I talked to my wife and we ended up saying, all right, let's do it, because it's a long commute from Louisville. It's not pre-COVID. There was no remote work job within the Cabinet for Economic Development. But I've loved it. I've been incredibly impressed. And I say this to people all the time, that joke about government employees. The truth is I've seen nothing but really hard work, people working long hours for low pay because they believe. They believe in the concept of public service, and they believe in trying to, do good for the Commonwealth. And that's just been great to experience. The cabinet has an incredible amount of really interesting, diverse business opportunities and legal issues, so that every day is a new challenge and a new opportunity. And I don't know if you noticed, but we just had the greatest economic year in Kentucky's history.
Oh, yeah.
We broke every record.
Hell yeah.
And that's really
incredible.
A testament to not just, what we see on the ground, which is that Kentucky's future is very bright, but also that Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 50 companies are seeing the exact same things, that this is a place where you want to pick up and relocate. This is a place where you want to grow. And I think we're also seeing that in the number of people moving back to the state that are seeing the same opportunities.
Yeah. Well, part of that record was, Ford, that plant. And I grew up in Elizabethtown, and actually this past weekend, I was in Glendale. Eating at a restaurant there called the Whistle Stop. Okay. And I was just sitting there out in front on the bench and just laughing because there's only like 1,800 people in the city where that Ford plant is going. And it's just amazing to think that is coming in there, and me growing up there and just knowing what that is going to do to that city. in that area is just going to be really exciting to see. So that's a big part of that record-breaking number was that $6 billion plant that's coming in. It's going to be very cool. But from a high level, you said that everybody within the cabinet and the government has this deep sense of meaning and purpose, which is amazing. Talk about the specific purpose of what you guys do day in and day out, which is KY innovation. So at a high level, we'll dive in as we go on throughout this conversation. But at a high level, what is the purpose of KY innovation?
Sure. KY Innovation is the state agency responsible for supporting entrepreneurs, startups, trying to encourage more venture capital into the state, providing funding for most of the programs like Awesome Inc. that a lot of people have heard of, and also just generally telling the story of Kentucky. Gathering stories from startup, gathering stories from the people that are doing good things here, and making sure that those are marketed and told, like the partnership we have with you guys. And you guys are doing a great job highlighting a lot of these companies. We need as much of that as possible.
No doubt.
So that's really KY Innovation. So we operate predominantly with a lean staff within the cabinet. David's there, and one of about 6 people we have now. And because I do the dual role of general counsel and also executive director of KY Innovation, every lawyer that gets put into the Cabinet for Economic Development rapidly learns, congratulations, you're also a part of KY Innovation. And I think that's a really good thing for them because, we're creating better lawyers in that sense. They're getting an understanding of the business and not just the legal implications. They're understanding how the legal decisions we make impact different business opportunities and where they can get creative and help companies grow. So the overall mission has really been the same for about 20 years since it started. And I don't know if you guys are aware or have ever seen the 2002 strategic plan that Kentucky did.
I don't think so.
So in 2002, as part of a multi-year study, Kentucky released a beautiful graphic for the time, very high quality report that outlined all of the different ways Kentucky was going to help in innovation and spur research, commercialize technology, advance basically the future generation and future economy. And it's an incredible document because if you look at it, the foundational principles of what they highlight of what we need to do to foster growth are the exact same things that every state has been doing since that time. Kentucky was at the forefront of innovation back in 2002 with already a lot of the good ideas that still remain good ideas. So create regional entrepreneurial hubs where that there are going to be entrepreneurs that need support, an issue that was much more important before the internet and connectivity that has now allowed somebody in Paducah to get advice from somebody in Lexington much easier. Expand our research portfolio so that we can create an actual commercialization pipeline for research and technologies that are coming out of the universities. Focus on industry clusters. Create state-sponsored investment funds. All of these things were in the 2002 report, and then we just lost money. At the time, we were really wealthy as a state, and then we weren't. But it still is the backbone of what KY Innovation does today. We're just constantly trying to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of those programs. That's a big part of what KY Innovation does.
So you mentioned the loss of funds. Was that coal?
Coal.
Coal. So coal left. Okay, and that makes sense. Let's talk about those funds. So how much funding goes towards KY innovation specifically from the state's budget?
So it's hard to parse out an exact number just because so much of it is fluid. We're using people from the legal department to help staff up KY innovation, but it's multi-millions of dollars. I mean, we're putting more together in just our investment funds than we ever did previously. We've tripled the amount that we're investing in early stage seed startups just in the past couple of years. We have the SBIR matching grant program. That's $2 million for direct matching funds to companies that secure SBIR, STTR grants. We're staffing all the regional hub offices, and that's a multi-million-dollar program where we're providing not only staffing, which is the key part of that operation, people on the ground that can meet and engage with entrepreneurs, but also sponsorships to help sponsor organizations within the community that are also providing support services to entrepreneurs and startups. Then we also have, various indirect partnerships like Kentucky Commercialization Ventures, right? We founded it, now we finance it and support it. It's at KSTC. The Kentucky Enterprise Fund. Some of the funds are restricted. So the Kentucky Enterprise Fund, which is the state investment funds, those can only be used, and that's by statute, for investment fund activities. And we want that. We want to make sure that those dollars are going to be there, that it can be an evergreen fund. But the interesting thing is, if you look at the numbers, and you could see some of that in the annual report, which we were just talking about, we've not done a good job of talking about exactly how much it is. I mean, it's over $15 million. If you look at other states like Ohio and Indiana, they do a great job of tying what the state is spending money to the actual programs through a coordinated marketing effort. They talk about it a lot. We have not done that. It's something we definitely need to work on, and that I think we are working on right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a good way that I was kind of thinking of KY Innovation is you guys are the allocators of government funds, of state allocated funds, to make sure that, one, it's getting in the hands of people who are supporting entrepreneurs and, you know, having the programs that are things like what Middle Tech does or things like what Awesome Inc. does or all the other regional hubs. But you guys are also, you know, like the SBIR grant matching program and like the venture fund that you guys invest in startups through. You're actually getting some of those funds into the hands of entrepreneurs. Is that a good way to describe it?
That's a great way to describe it, Logan.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly it. And we also help push strategy. That was a big part of, you know, as we came in 2019, we really wanted to do it's kind of cliche to say it, but a listening tour. We wanted to go out and meet the entrepreneurs and figure out what they thought, and also the entrepreneurial support organizations, the people that are on the ground doing this work. And one of the biggest complaints we heard is that there was no state coordinated strategy. So we've really worked hard to try to build a group of stakeholders, all of our major, you know, executives within the space that we fund through the different programs, and say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's come up with a strategy that everybody's going to buy into, and accountability and metrics to support that strategy.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about those programs that you guys actually support. So as I was going through the annual report, I kind of realized, oh my gosh, like they have their hands in all sorts of different stuff, you know, whether it's the research and commercialization from the universities or whether it's more entrepreneurship and kind of hard business and startup focused. So let's just start by going through some of the significant ones that, you know, I think we were the most familiar with before getting into this report. So I want to start with just the KY Innovation Hubs. So tell us a little bit about what this hub network is, who comprises it, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into that here and there.
Sure. The hub network is regional hubs, so think offices. It used to be part of something called the Kentucky Innovation Network. When this started out of the 2002 report, there were 13 offices spread out across the state. In about 2018, and they were all part of KSTC. They were one giant umbrella organization within KSTC called the Kentucky Innovation Network. In 2018, that network was broken up, and instead they created 5 public-private partnerships. So Awesome Inc. was a recipient of grant funding. SOAR, in Paducah, it was Sprocket. In Louisville, it was LEAP, which is now Amplify, where they looked and said, okay, we're going to create a regional focus, but we want you to be part of a comprehensive organization through KY Innovation to make sure that you're collaborating, sharing ideas, sharing resources. And that's basically the Hubs program. It's gone through a lot of different names. It was originally Kentucky Rise, but in Kentucky, Kentucky Rise is a well-known foster care program.
SEO, that's tough.
Yeah. So the Hubs program is basically what came out of that. And every year we've looked at that to try to figure out, are there areas that aren't served? Can a hub take on a service area a little bit farther away and provide resources there? And even though there are only 6 technical organizations, there's still almost 12 or 13 different individual offices throughout the state.
I think that just to kind of expand on some things Tony talked about with collaboration, you know, connectivity between the hubs, as he said, you know, we're always trying to improve on, you know, sort of how things function. But with that piece of it, you know, they on paper are, I think, contractually sort of obligated to collaborate, but we are, I think, have had a concerted effort really over the last year and are pushing really hard this year to make sure that there is a lot more sort of cohesion, idea sharing, sort of best practice, you know, more comprehensively shared across all of the hubs. And I think we're making progress in that area. But in reality, again, as Tony said, when the Innovation Network was launched, the internet didn't exist as it does today, the ways to connect didn't exist the way they do. There's no reason now for you not to benefit from the expertise and resources in, the triangle when you live in another part of the state, or for somebody in Lexington to not benefit from, the resources and expertise that exist in Louisville. So I think we've made strides in that area, but that's something that's really important to us.
For sure.
One thing that I'm curious about is, so in 2018, the hubs were changed and broken up, and there's a new strategy. Was that an election year?
It was not an election year, but it was a different administration.
So what I want to kind of have a conversation around this, because when a new administration comes in, if there's progress or if there's some kind of existing plan, does change of administration affect the way that innovation is invested in? Who gets to make those decisions when an administration changes? Because I feel like I remember when that happened, when the administration did change, people were worried or maybe upset that plans were kind of ripped out from underneath them. You guys didn't have government backgrounds, but you came into the government. What's your all's view on how often should an administration be able to come in and change like an innovative strategy? Because I feel like you got to kind of stick to one. What's your all's thoughts on that?
Well, that's a big question.
It is, yeah.
So when should an administration be able to make changes to programs? I think it depends on the type of program, and whether it's working or not, whether there's room for improvement, and the importance of stickiness within the name, and the operations.
Yeah.
So we have not made significant external public-facing changes to the programs in terms of what they're called or things like that, unless we thought we really needed to, because of the importance of making sure entrepreneurs know where to go.
Yeah.
If you change the name of the organization that the entrepreneur is supposed to go to every couple of years, you'll find it really difficult to connect with that community, because you won't build the trust relationships or the longevity to be able to create metrics that help support the organization in its fundraising endeavors or its sustainability. So we've preached from the outset to all of the organizations, one of the critical things that we need to do over the next period of time, regardless of election cycles, is really to make sure that those organizations and the infrastructure is sustainable. Mm-hmm. So we need to make sure that people know what the organizations are and how they operate through discussions like this and interviews like this. We need to make sure that the organizations themselves are thinking about fundraising strategies for at least their operational budget, because if all of their money is entirely dependent on the government, you're right, there is governmental risk anytime there's an administration change, or even if there's just a personnel change. But if the organization itself has provided value to the community and shown that value and engaged in, a sustainable financial program, and a model, it should be able to start raising funds. Now, we know that process takes time, and we know, because we pay for it, the value of these organizations and how critical they are. So, at this point, we feel pretty comfortable supporting the ones that we have. Mm-hmm. But it's also creating accountability and impact reports. Every one of our organizations now has to have impact reports that show how they're contributing value to the community and how they're serving. They have to meet metrics. They've got goals. We're treating all of these organizations not as nonprofits, but really as businesses. We're looking to you to generate returns on our investment dollars, because these are state dollars. How do I talk to somebody who's, earning barely minimum wage, and we've got their tax dollars, and say, well, we just gave it to this organization with no accountability, and they went out and threw a party. That's not a really good look. And also, I don't think what any of the people involved want their mission to be or their story to be. They're all dedicated, but a lot of it is just providing guidance and giving clear instructions to people to make sure that they understand the mission, they understand why this is important, these impact metrics, and what the result will be, which is hopefully, if we do this right, to create a sustainable long-term infrastructure that's well-funded, where the dollars increase every year because we need the additional funds, because we're serving more entrepreneurs And at the same time, we need the entrepreneurial community to really step up, particularly founders that have exited, and either tell us what they don't like about what's happening right now in the programs so that we can make those improvements, or if they do see the value, to write checks, because that's really the backbone of really vibrant entrepreneurial communities, whether it's cities or states across the country, are altruistic, exited entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all this kind of discussion around the collaboration and you guys supporting people who are, already running businesses, kind of like what Middle Tech is doing. We were, just beginning to monetize and turn into a real business. And you guys were like, we're going to support you guys along the way. What really gets me excited, and kind of back to your point about collaboration, is that's exactly what we saw. And our solution to it was to provide media for it. And I think that's where I get really excited about the scalability of this and your guys' support that's allowing us to scale this to bigger than, what it was before in a much faster time frame. The more media and conversation you can get out around this stuff, we get to talk to all the hubs that you guys are talking to. And the more conversation we get to have and put that out there into the world, and then we want to take that and make it into a regional focus where we're pulling learnings and connecting people from all these other ecosystems. That's where I get really excited.
I think and it gets us excited too. I think that really is connected even to the question about sort of vulnerability during administration change, that you're building something sustainable, not just through funding and sort of metrics. Those are important and those are going to drive what we do, but how we're demonstrating that, how are we telling the story, and how are we creating more of an ecosystem, a stronger ecosystem and culture that is not just going to be seen as related to, what happens every 4 years.
Yeah.
It is something that is ongoing and kind of evergreen. And, that's how you make it more invulnerable, is that you not only measure success, but you are able to kind of demonstrate that and show it. And so, media, storytelling is a big part of that for us.
For sure.
Tony will probably get into, but we talk about how we don't do a good enough job of telling the stories of our successes. We don't hold up those object lessons of entrepreneurs who have succeeded, companies that have exited, to not only tell our story outward and kind of market ourselves as a state to people who don't know about Kentucky, but tell our story to ourselves. And so that's why partnerships like this are really important. And again, doing a better job of being transparent with, the marks that we're hitting, the marks that we're not, and the efforts that we're making to try to advance things. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that transparency and something we've hit on kind of multiple times through this, the annual report really does a great job of breaking a lot of this stuff down and listing out what you guys have done and how everything's connected. Are there any other resources you want to point listeners towards to find out more about the programs that you guys are doing and the funding that's going into them?
Sure. We have, thanks to an incredible team, and I need to say this, we have an incredible team in KY Innovation.
No doubt.
And also across the ecosystem with our funded partners. They're constantly improvising and improving and coming up with great ideas, probably too many ideas because it's hard to sort through them sometimes. One of the things that we talked about was how do we engage more directly with entrepreneurs? So not only are we creating a better social media campaign, and David and his team in the comms department has really done a great job just generating stories, providing information, having application deadline information publicly available in an easily accessible place. That's been a big part of it. Also the website. So I encourage everybody to follow KY Innovation on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn. We have a newsletter. We also are rebuilding the website, kyinnovation.com. Now, we're doing it in-house with government resources. So it's a slow process.
We're iterating.
We have one web developer for multiple websites
Sure.
who's also doing graphics and 3 other jobs. So it's a slow process. But, like so much of what we're looking at, and I know you were talking about election cycles, we really do have a long-term view of this. We need to make slow, consistent, relentless progress forward. And I think we're seeing that in things like the annual report, in the website being improved, in the social media campaigns, where, eventually somebody's going to look up and be like, wow, Kentucky, where did they come from? And we're doing that all the time right now. We're seeing that happen all the time, and people learning about something and being like, wow, that's from Kentucky. That's what we hope, is that the progress and work that's being done now to lay the foundation for a lot of these initiatives, they become second nature to check. It becomes habitual to check KY Innovation, social media, and website for deadlines. It becomes habitual to get on the monthly ESO webinar call where all of the entrepreneurial support organizations get an opportunity to hear about what's happening in the legislature with deadlines, with events that are coming up, to share wins and talking points that they could spread when they talk to people in their community.
And he mentioned a kind of an internal call that we're starting to have with not just the hubs, but other, entrepreneur support organizations across the state, so that we can make sure that they're aware of what we're doing. We understand what they're doing, ideas, resources get shared. But we also just started to, on a quarterly basis, have an open call, more of a public presentation, where, some of the real-time data and metrics and information about programs and other things that you'll see pop in the annual report, we're going to look at those and share those. And we really also want to, again, leverage that as an opportunity to celebrate wins across the state and the success. There are a lot of them, and they are well-kept secrets, unfortunately, outside of people who do follow certain social media feeds or, business publications. But we have a company, Virtual Peaker, that just oversubscribed around on a coast. A lot of people don't know what some of that terminology means, but if they knew that that was happening, again, that's a story that that really is, again, just illustrative of what can happen and is happening here. And so, yeah.
And one thing we wanted to, right there, Virtual Peaker, let's talk about, access to capital. So let's talk about, Kentucky Enterprise Fund, and then some angel tax credit stuff. And then we can talk about any of the other programs, because I think those are two that I ran into. So I just did a capital raise, and those were the two that came up the most when I was doing that was, hey, talk to some more angels, because there's tax credits that you can take advantage of there, and they're getting more active. But also, just want to give a quick, major shout out to Kelby Price. I absolutely loved working with Kelby. He was one of the first investors that I spoke to that, gave us confidence. We talked about this earlier today. Working with him and him being able to pull the trigger quickly after he did his due diligence and just give that confidence to a founder early in their journey, and the insightful questions he asks and the intros he gives, he's doing an amazing job with that. Talk about that organization from your perspective and how you guys support that. Kelby is kind of the face of that, but how do you guys in the background, support that with funding and kind of go out and push them along?
Well, I mean, I think you hit it right there. We fund that.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are two great programs. The Kentucky Enterprise Fund, which has never really been branded as the Kentucky Enterprise Fund or even talked about. When we talked to entrepreneurs, they knew that there was potentially some state money, but it was never packaged together as an Elevate Ventures or anything like that with a brand that was easily recognizable and identifiable as state support. It didn't even have a website until very recently. Mm-hmm. And, this is 2022, So we've really worked hard to raise the profile of those state investments funds so that people know that they exist, and also to make the process a lot more transparent. So Kelby's great. And it's great that you, recognize, we're able to give that shout out to him. I'm sure he's going to listen and be excited to hear that. He does that work all the time. He's an example of the kind of teammate we have that's passionate and committed, and his team is expanding right now. But some of the improvements that they saw, and this is part of keeping the structure but working from within to improve it, are, one, let's create application periods, which not only give the entrepreneurs information about when they can apply, so there's some certainty, especially if we do it quarterly, that there's an application period, get your application in. It provides a deadline to encourage the procrastinators among us to get their paperwork in. But it also is a really good information gathering tool, right? You get an update on what's happening in your community of people at the very early stage all the way up to later stages of people that need money. We also wanted to make sure there was a transparent application process, so you knew exactly what the process was going to be and when you'd get a response. We wanted to make sure that there's winners declared as opposed to people quietly getting money. We should celebrate the people that are at a stage of their company that they qualify for different fundraising rounds. And Kelby and his team, Candace and KSTC, this is really a program, Kelby Price and the Kentucky Enterprise Fund, and they're in the process of trying to create a brand right now, and I think they're
Start with
going to
an M. I've been seeing Mammoth.
That is
Am I
probably
speaking too soon?
not
Is this
going to
gonna
have
be an
much
announcement?
longevity. They will be, I think, announcing a rebranding very soon,
Okay.
which is an important step.
like a startup. There's fits and starts.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
Sometimes
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
get in one direction and realize that's not the way to go. I think with naming and finding the right name, they're in the process. And I think they've been working through some different iterations to see what sticks. I think they've landed on something. I don't know, blow their releases out, telling them to
We're not
to
gonna do
market.
that.
But that's an example of another iteration, another step forward of continuous improvement. And the other thing they've done is, when we said to Kelby, get creative, we want to create a really strong toolbox for entrepreneurs. We want to make sure that there's a funding period and dollars available at each stage of growth for a company. He and the team came up with really good, inventive ways to do that, like the Toolbox Fund, which is not just, an equity investment here, but an opportunity to get grant dollars to do a specific thing, whether that's hire a lawyer to draft documents or potentially
That's
take
cool.
a flight out to the coast
That's really cool.
to raise capital, or, hire a consultant for a specific thing. Those are the types of creative things that they're thinking about that we're encouraging and fostering. We want to be able to give our people the opportunity. The reason we hired them is they're smart, they're thoughtful. We want to allow them to be creative and be successful and figure out ways to support that. The second program that you mentioned is the angel tax credit. And we have 2 tax credits, not just for individual angels, which are people that invest. And this is something Kentucky has that a lot of other states don't. But you can get a tax credit depending upon where the business is based of either 25% or 40% of the investment. So you're taking the risk out of otherwise potentially risky early stage investments. That's a great thing that Kentucky has sponsored. It went away for a little while. It came back. It was something that we really wanted to bring back. And it came back in 2020. And it's undersubscribed. So I think there's a messaging issue right now that people aren't aware that it's back because it had disappeared for a little while. But there's $3 million a year available for that tax credit. We also set aside $3 million, so $6 million a year for funds. So for funds to start up, we give them a tax credit to encourage them to be able to raise capital from different investors and pool their money together to help with things like diligence and to help with entrepreneurial support. So those are 2 different ways. There's also another entity, Commonwealth Seed Capital, which has also never had a public application process or a website.
Maybe you asked me about this the other
Yeah.
night, and I was like, I don't know what that is. I just
Correct.
finished raising money. I didn't know what that was.
Exactly. Well, here's what it is. It is another investment fund that is now, for the first time, really working collaboratively with KSTC. It's got a brand new management committee. The management committee just turned over in October. They have great ideas. They're working on finding the next executive director for that program. And I could not be more excited about the quality of the people that are, again, doing unpaid public service to help bring venture capital into the state and really support our entrepreneurial community. That's the funding side of just direct capital investment. The other areas where we think there's a lot of opportunity are to work with the other funders, like our private funds, like Endeavor, which is doing great work and constantly growing.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Unbridled Ventures.
Yeah, Unbridled, Poplar.
There's John Wilmoth's group.
Yeah.
We have so many great VCs in this state that are deeply committed about not only Kentucky, but recognize the value proposition for investing in Midwestern companies. We want to start engaging with them more directly to figure out what tools will help them be successful. Is it more classes? Do we need to generate the next level of analysts and mid-level people within the community, or your junior partners? Or then, how are we going to get more managing directors that really appreciate and are passionate about early stage investing? How are we going to take the relationships that we know they have with different VCs across the country and leverage those to bring those dollars into Kentucky? How do we create an easier funding database? So how can we make it easier for an entrepreneur so that when they come to somebody like Kelby or Commonwealth Seed Capital and they say, I'm this kind of company, I'm looking for this kind of money, this is where I am in the stage, rather than you guys needing to go around and ask 1,000 people for money, what if we can at least give you a good start and some warm intros? Here's the 20 people that have actually invested in that space, in around that dollar amount in this region.
Yeah.
And we'll
amazing.
make some more warm intros. These are the kinds of things that we see in the future because of, we've increased their administrative expense budget so that they could go out and hire people to do this work, because ultimately it takes human beings. It takes people, not or AI. I mean, I don't want to short shift AI, the incredible work we're doing around AI and machine learning here in the state. We've got really interesting companies. I mean, it's possible that right now, and I may not know about it, there's a tool that can scrub this data quickly and put this report together. And if it's there, please contact us.
Speaking of please contact, and before we leave it, Tony's right. The angel credit is so potentially valuable, and it is undersubscribed. We want anyone who is even considering a raise and trying to go out and raise capital to know about that program, to be prepared ahead of time, because a lot of times it's the business leading that sort of application process for the business and for the investor. Both of them have to be certified, and then the investment obviously is what gets approved. But more than that, I think Tony mentioned that it went away, and that I think truly demonstrated the value of it to a lot of people. We talked to you, Evan, earlier about your company, Simba. We talked to several other entrepreneurs today, and a couple of them mentioned sort of the difficulty that caused when it went away in terms of raising in the state and having to go outside the state. So having that back is something that we are really excited about, but want to make sure, again, everybody who is, a startup founder or somebody who's working in that space understands that it's available, and you might need to be proactive, obviously, in kind of taking that to the people that you're going out and raising with. So
yeah. It'd be cool as a founder, to your point there, Tony, was if I could come to a Kentucky sponsored website, kyinnovation.com. What's your all's website?
That's it. Nailed it.
kyinnovation.com.
We kept it simple.
Yes. I come to the website and there's an angel investment tab. I click on that. I put my pitch deck in there, and then I'd love on the back end to have all the angels that sign up to be part of the tax credit program to just somehow get that. Because my experience with the angel tax credit was, I was through Awesome Inc. given a list of all the people that signed up, but I was just given a list. And so then I had to, and this is not a problem because as a fundraiser, you have to do this. It's part of the process, but it'd be sped up if I could in one place apply and then they all get that application, see it once, right?
Yeah.
That'd be super cool. And I think that would be really valuable to both the entrepreneurs, but also for the angels to just get that in their inbox, and periodically, and just see what deals are coming their way. Because, like the Bluegrass Angels and some other funds, they kind of aggregate those and almost act as a gatekeeper. And that can be a problem in one way, but also as an entrepreneur, it'd be nice to just kind of reach a bunch of people at one time.
And Bluegrass Angels, I mean, another fund doing great work here. Chris Young is actually on the Commonwealth Seed Capital. He didn't have enough to do to volunteer an incredible amount of time to help us really get that organization to where we all want to see it get to. Now, and one thing I hear all the time is that there's not a lot of money in Kentucky. Every entrepreneur, that I talk to has almost a foundational belief that there's not a lot of money. But the more that we talk to them, the more that we learn, they just don't know where the money is. They've never heard of a lot of these organizations. I mean, with Commonwealth Seed Capital and the Enterprise Fund not having websites, it's almost, if you don't know who to talk to about it, you really don't have a sense of what we're investing in or how we're investing our dollars. But then you look and see we've invested, over $100 million.
Yeah.
We're really deeply invested in some of the biggest companies, and we were early into those companies like Bexion and Apellis and Make Time and some of the big success stories that we've had coming out of Kentucky. If you look back in their history, a lot of them were early state funded recipients.
I think that's another value of the annual report, and going back to something that's a lot more comprehensive. If you're a data nerd, which I kind of tend to be, if you just leaf through the appendices in the back, that tells a story of the sort of all of the companies that you've heard of and some of them that you haven't, and how they, got that boost early on at a critical stage.
I do have a question on this topic. So for the Kentucky Enterprise Fund, for example, when they invest in a startup and there's an exit event, what happens with that money from an exit event? Does that all go back into the Kentucky Enterprise Fund, or what's that look like?
So by statute, those are required to be reinvested.
Okay.
Oh, love that.
So yeah, it's great. It's a great thing. I mean, this is entrepreneurship is a bipartisan initiative.
For sure.
You know,
No
what's
doubt.
every single person talk about when they're out in the community? They're talking about small businesses and the small businesses that are really going to change the game for us. You know, can we create the next Salesforce here? I absolutely believe we can. And so we've seen, as we talk to the legislators and the governor, who's deeply supportive of entrepreneurship himself, they're passionate about it. Nobody's ever talked to them, though. Nobody's ever sat down with them and explained where that money goes. They know it goes to the general fund of the Cabinet for Economic Development, but we've just had incredible responses from anybody that we've sat down and actually given the PowerPoint to. You know, these are all the different programs. And frankly, it's too much information for one sitting. When you really sit down and realize the different ways that Kentucky is supporting entrepreneurship, although we've done it quietly for so long, it's just too much to take in one sitting, because it's so diverse with the hubs programs and then our commercialization programs and then our funding. Each one of those could be their own podcast to really understand what is happening, how you can access it, who the players are, who's got the passion to drive it forward over the next 5, 10, or 20 years. You know, I'm in this chair for a short period, and I've loved my time with KY Innovation, but you know, the next group of leaders that come into that role are equally passionate, you know, and are hopefully going to move the needle even further down the line and probably to areas that we can't even dream of right now.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I mean, you can go back and listen to multiple of our episodes. One of the things you hear is this access to capital thing, but I think there's just like you said, there's a disconnect. So that's why it's really exciting for you guys to come on here and, you know, just talk about what's going on. And I think that's what really excites me about the future and this partnership is just getting the word out there about, you know, all these different programs. And you have to understand, like, this stuff is not just going to happen overnight. You're not just going to throw programs in place and then boom, we've solved the capital, access to capital problem. So it's really exciting just to hear about all these different things that, I mean, even to me, who's really involved in the startup community, it took me reading the annual report to be like, oh, it's all connected in this way. And like, there are all these support organizations. So yeah, that's just super encouraging to hear. And
so
as
you're
we
making David's day because he had to spend a lot of time with the team writing that thing. You know, and it was really,
kudos to you.
They
David.
did an incredible job.
Yeah.
No stone left unturned.
Anybody listening, it's definitely worth checking out. But as we wrap it up here, just tell us about what you guys are excited about going into the future as it relates to entrepreneurship in Kentucky.
I love our growth potential. You know, I think our ability to attract talent has never been stronger. You know, our opportunity to invest in these companies has never been better. You know, we have the SSBCI program that we applied for, which is $117 million into Kentucky. That's our allocation, SSBCI 2.0. And, you know, in a broad showing of bipartisan support, they've dedicated 70% of that money to venture capital investing. In SSBCI 1.0 in 2010, we didn't spend any of that money on venture capital investing. So imagine what we're going to be able to achieve now with, you know, assuming it gets approved, knock on wood, you know, it's a federal government grant program. But if they're listening, we love the work you're doing. But with $27 million that comes into the state every 3 years to support those efforts, I mean, that's a game changer. So I'm excited to see what we can do with that and how we can deploy that efficiently, how we can learn from deploying that capital, how we can build the companies that in 10 years will sell and really cement our legacy. You know, in 1980, Louisville, Kentucky, and Kentucky generally was basically the same size as Nashville, Indianapolis, and these other places. I mean, our peer areas. It's incredible what can happen in 40 years. But the fact that they're now bigger than us doesn't mean that that's inevitable. We have an opportunity right now, and I think we have the talent and energy to do it, to rewrite our own future for the next 40 years. With the investments from Ford and the big companies, if we can leverage these relationships, I see no reason why we can't be bigger, stronger, and better than any of our peers going into the next 40 years.
Man, I'm pumped. That was a perfect way to end it. And, you know, seriously, to you two, thank you guys so much for reaching out to us and, you know, recognizing the work we're doing and then providing that support. We're really excited to just continue to grow this partnership. And, you know, we kind of hinted at it there. you said it's hard to even cover everything that's going on in one podcast episode. So we're looking forward to putting out more content with you guys about how entrepreneurs in Kentucky can receive that funding and receive support. So all really exciting things ahead. So thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been an awesome conversation. Before we let you guys go, we always like reiterating where people can come to learn more. So we've mentioned kyinnovation.com. Anywhere else you guys want to point our listeners to come and get a hold of you
Definitely
guys?
come to kyinnovation.com. Again, that is continuing to grow. We're building that out. Again, the content that we're partnering with you on is going to be a part of that, but we will continue to, that's not just a work in progress, but I think it's good now. It's going to be great, and we're going to continue to add to that. And then those quarterly meetings that are virtual at this point, and probably will, continue to have a virtual option. Those are a good way for people to kind of get a quarterly sort of snapshot of where we are and what we're doing. And then I would really encourage people, wherever you are in the state, to, if you don't know sort of in proximity within your region what your hub is, to get familiar with that. So, I won't name check all of them now, but you can go to our website and find out which hub serves your region, who is, in charge of that, and get connected to them in that way as well. So
awesome.
And also social media. That's really an area where we're trying to communicate more clearly and more quickly.
Yeah.
Follow us on social, and that'll really expand the information about what's going on in the state for any.
Yeah, our handle's at KY Innovation all across the board. So
perfect. Well, again, thank you guys. We'll be looking forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you all.
You guys for the great work you're doing. And to the entrepreneurs out there who wake up every single day and put it all on the line. I mean, that's what all this is about.